Hello, today I mentioned this in my last video, but I really just want to talk about the Hunger Games. You know, nothing specific, just talking about one of the best dystopian series ever written. I don't really know what order to do this in. I have an entire list of topics I want to discuss. Okay, so this is kind of like not every thought, this is kind of more like deep thoughts, whatever, I don't know, like things that aren't like silly fangirl stuff, things that are like Suzanne Collins is a genius kind of stuff. Starting off with the first thing on my list, the way that the Capitol dumbs down the horrors of the games the same way the media did with the movies. I'm convinced that Suzanne Collins did this on purpose. In the books, the Capitol, they play down the games by talking about, the romance, the drama, instead of talking about that, it's kids killing kids. And the movie did it similarly with, crazy ad campaigns and the actors not being kids, and of course, focusing the story more on the romance instead of like on the horrors, whereas the whole point of the book was like, this is bad, you don't want this, and the movies are like, watch kids killing kids, it's fun. So really the media is just like the Capitol. When the movies take the games and they make it into entertainment the same way the Capitol does, it turns the viewers of the movies, the shallow movie watchers who don't really care about, the more deep messages or don't care about the books, it turns them into just like Capitol members that want nothing more than to watch children be slaughtered on a movie screen, which is sick. The next thing I want to discuss is, what is the rest of the world doing while the Hunger Games is, doing what they're doing? So we all know that Panem is in North America, so like here in Mexico and Canada and whatnot, but of course it looks really different because if you look at the map of Panem shown in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, you can see that the borders are different and like the water line is a lot higher. They kind of hint of what happened a little bit across the books. We know for sure that there was probably a global warming disaster with climate change and that caused the seas to rise, and at some point America wrecked itself and turned into a new country. But what about the rest of the world? What are they doing? Well, they could be there and just ignoring whatever horrors America are doing, or America could be the only area that survived. North America could be all that's left, though who knows? But a really interesting thing is that Coriolanus Snow in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as he's going on a train, he points out that he sees ruined cities in the distance, and he's all like, man, I wonder what it would have been like when this was a place called North America. That's like kind of what he said. There's ruins that still exist of our current world. So how far in the future are we? It's obviously quite a ways in the future, considering we had 75 years of Hunger Games, the Dark Days, which we don't know how long they lasted, and then another war, and then who knows how long were the districts and capital will living before the uprising that caused the Hunger Games to be made. But something else that I find really interesting is that in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it is canonically stated that the reaping day is on the 4th of July, turning a day that, America celebrates its independence into a day where kids are chosen to die. I don't know what Suzanne Collins is trying to say with that, but she's definitely trying to say something. Hunger Games isn't that old right now, but I think that it will go on to be a timeless story for a couple reasons. When you read a lot of books from that era, late 2000s, early 2010s, they feel really dated. Like, you read it and you just feel like, man, I can tell exactly what year this was made. But the Hunger Games, they don't really do that as much. They have a more timeless feel to them. And part of that, I think, is due to the fact that the technology in the Hunger Games world is completely nothing like our own technology. They don't have, like, cell phones and all that stuff that we do. The technology is somewhat limited. No one has their own cars, really. No one has cell phones. No one really has any major technology. I think they have TVs, but even then, they're not specified. Like, a lot of very dated feeling science fiction is always like some hologram thing, some stupid see-through phone, some dumb stuff that will become outdated and like weird sounding really fast. But the Hunger Games doesn't really talk about any of that tech, and the only tech that's really there is like crazy advanced stuff that's completely unrealistic. So I think that's really interesting, which of course I think that in universe, that's of course the Capitol and the way that they control people is by limiting their access to personal technology. But I just think it adds to the timelessness of the story. The one thing that kind of throws that off is in Catching Fire when Katniss and Peeta are watching tapes. That was odd, especially considering it was written in 2009, I think. And tapes weren't really used that much, whatever. The next thing I want to talk about is how sick it makes me that people are in love with young Coriolanus Snow. Like, I get people think he's hot, I get it. but I cannot stand for it. He is so evil. Even as a kid, people are always like, oh my goodness, like, he didn't have to turn evil. Did we read the same book? He was always messed up. He was always selfish, narcissistic, awful person. He just wasn't in a place of power to become evil yet. But once you put that man in a place of power, he murders children and murdered his girlfriend and murdered his best friend and never really felt sorry for it. He only felt bad for killing when he thought it might get him in trouble. And the second that he realized he wasn't going to get in trouble anymore, he kills his girlfriend. Well, when people are in love with him, that makes me really upset. They're always like, oh my goodness, hear me out, young Snow. You can love the actor all you want, that's fine, but you cannot love the character of Snow. He is a psychopath, and I will not stand for anyone being in love with a psychopathic, murderous, child-killing dictator. Thank you. It also annoys me when I see like major Snow Bear shippers. Oh my goodness, him and Lucy Gray, they're so perfect together. Why did he have to turn evil? They could have lived happily. No, if you read what's written in this book, he was never in love with her. There was maybe a couple seconds where he considered running off and staying in 12, but he was immediately like, nah, because then I couldn't be in power and I couldn't be rich. He never truly loved her. He was in love with her for convenience. He used her to win the games. Sure, that ended up saving her life, but was he ever truly in love with her? No, he only really cared about himself. It might look like the illusion that he actually felt something, and maybe he did, but there was always like selfish roots to it. He would have never like sacrificed himself for his love, unlike other people in this series. Yeah, so I think that's the end of my Snow rant. I really hate him. The next thing I want to talk about is one of the main reasons why people push aside the Hunger Games as just another teen dystopia. They complain that it has a love triangle, and I am aware that it has one, and I hate love triangles. I hate love triangles. But I love the Hunger Games, and the love triangle in the Hunger Games does not bother me because it's not really a love triangle. For one thing, if you read these books with any bit of like thinking involved and don't just be stupid shallow about it, then you will see, one, she was never in love with Gale. He forced it upon her. She only kissed him because she felt bad for him. She pitied him, her best friend, who she loved, and she didn't deserve to have to give him up because he wanted to be in love with her. And sure, she wasn't in love with Peeta at first. I don't believe she was truly in love with Peeta until Catching Fire. But it's not that she chose Peeta over Gale. It's that she didn't really have a choice. She was forced into the situation when Gale should not have been worrying about getting her love. When she had been through all this trauma, he should have been worrying about how to like comfort his best friend, how to help her, but no. He's just like, do you like me? Like, why'd you kiss Peeta in the arena? Girl, would you rather your best friend be dead, girl? The last thing I want to talk about is Prim, the way that the whole series was sparked by Prim getting called at the reaping and Katniss volunteering for her. Her only goal being to survive so she could come home to her sister. And the whole series was, again, fueled by that. She wanted to protect her family. She wanted to protect her sister. That's what started everything. And after all of that, Prim dies. She couldn't save the one thing she wanted to save the whole time. And that was almost, I just thought of this, that was almost kind of foreshadowed with Rue. She constantly mentioned how much Rue reminded her of Prim. Constantly, Katniss was always like, oh my goodness, Rue reminds me so much of my sister Prim. And then Rue dies after Katniss said, oh my goodness, I wish I could save her. And then she dies. She could not save her. She could not save the little girl that reminded her so much of her own sister. And then the same thing happened to Prim, and Prim died, and I literally just thought of this now, but like, foreshadowing much? That has been all my thoughts for now. I very well could make 20 million more videos on thoughts on the Hunger Games, but my brain can't think of any more right now, and I bet I'm gonna remember them all the second I put the camera away. So we'll see, part 2 maybe?